This your girl Samantha, and this my podcast, Naturalized. And so today, we here with my girl Inez. Hey, what's up,
Hey,
Inez?
y'all.
So I want to give y'all a little backstory on how I met Inez and how we became one, because we locked in for life. So I was going to a church online in Tulsa, and we was in the same Bible study group. A girl was leading it or whatever, and so we met through a Bible study group. I had really just started my faith and my walk with God that July. So I think we was kind of like in second semester. It was like second semester.
I think so.
Yeah. And we ended up meeting, and we kind of connected on social media, and we didn't really do much talking, but you know, it's kind of like we locked in, and God be knowing what God be doing, because although you don't necessarily connect on a deeper level at that point in time, it will spin a block around for you to do so later at a later time. And so I met her, this been like 2 years ago, right? Like 2 years
I think
now.
so.
Yeah.
I think it was 2021 when we were in Paige's group, because I had just moved into my apartment when I really started locking in. So it had to be around 2021.
Okay. So we locked in like 2 years ago, and we just felt like in our spirit this year, we was like, she hit me up and she was like, I feel like we should meet. Like, you know, we should meet in person. And I was like, me too. Like, and so it just worked out, because I remember her saying, like, we didn't necessarily put it on the calendar just yet, but we just was talking about it or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to make that a thing for me. But you also know I just had a baby. So I was like, I don't really know how this is going to work out, what it's going to look like for me, because traveling with a baby, doing this podcast, it's a lot of work. So I was like, but then my sister, my family on my daddy's side live in Maryland. And so I was like, I asked my sister, I was like, when the next time you going to Maryland? She was like, I think I'm going for President's Weekend. And I was like, I'm going to go with you, because like you can watch the baby, and I can run to Inez's house, and we could chop it up, meet in person, and shoot the podcast, and it be like personal but business. Like, you know, like it's a business trip, but it's personal also. So I was like, shoot, can we do that? And she was like, yeah, I'm good with that. So I was like, let me run that by Inez. And it was so dope because it happened sooner than we would have thought. You know?
And it was really a God thing. I'm not going to hold you, because when, like she said, we hadn't really, like, we were in the same group together, but we really hadn't connected. And I followed her on social for a while and all of that stuff. And then maybe like a couple months ago, like, we had talked about something. I don't know if I asked her for prayer, or like we had just reconnected about something. And then it sparked all of this conversation about like meeting in person and all that stuff. And when I tell you, the enemy was trying it, okay? Because I don't drive. And I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. I do drive, but like long distance and by myself is not really my cup of tea. Like it took me a couple years to even get on the highway. Like when I got my license, I'm just one of those people. And so I was like, how am I going to get there? Because, like, flying and driving, those both aren't my cup of tea. So I was like, okay. And she was like, well, I can come to Maryland. I was like, okay, God is working it out, right? So we had set the plan for President's Day, like this weekend or whatever. And the week was rapidly approaching. I was like, the weather seems like it's going to be good. We're going to have a good time. Like, it's all going to work out. Like, I'm so excited. The week of my birthday, I get sick. And I was like, yo, for real? Like, I cannot be sick next week because she has a new baby. Like, I can't spread that to her. So I'm like, okay, first I was sick. Like, my whole office was run down. Like, we were all just going through it. Then the week approaches of, like, us getting together. And I think it was Thursday or Friday. All my coworkers go, it's going to snow. It's going to snow. You're not going to be able. And you're not going to be able to go anywhere. She's not going to be able to go anywhere. So I was freaking out because they're driving down to Maryland. And I was like, what if they can't make it or like whatever? And the Holy Spirit, I was at work and the Holy Spirit was like, just text her and like, just let her know that it's supposed to snow. Cause I almost wasn't. Cause I was like, I want her to get down here. Like I wasn't about to, but he's like, no, just let her know. And like, trust me. So I was like, okay. And my husband sent me this song and he was like, no matter what they say, it's going to be a good day. So I was trying so hard to like focus on God's promises versus like what people were saying about her coming here and it snowing. So, and yesterday night, I was up all night because I was worried about the snow. I was worried we weren't going to be able to come get you. And I couldn't go to sleep. And I woke up. Them roads were clear, okay? Them roads were clear. Road, right? So, like, God is so cool in how he orchestrates things because he worked it out. Despite what they were saying or what the weather said or whatever, if he means for something to happen, he's going to get it done. So, period. Here we are.
So, now that's how we here. And I want to say, like, shout out to God because, like, this is my first out-of-state podcast. Like, and this is, like...
Okay. Period. We out of state. Like, we love that. This is the first of many.
One of many. Like, if I feel like that's just God showing me, like, you're gonna meet divine people who you come across who I want to start on your podcast and who I want, you know, you to talk to and cross paths with, and it's not gonna be in your city, in your state, but I'm gonna make a way for you to be able to go around the world, because that was one thing I said to God when I started this. I was like, even when a few years back, it's so crazy because I got like friends that be like, dang, I remember you was talking about this YouTube thing. Like, you were saying like you wanted to do this in the beginning, but you kind of was just going to go with what you had at the moment. And I was like, I ain't doing no YouTube right now. Cause like I couldn't master that and had the courage to do this all while weathering the storm of everything God was trying to show me. Cause I'm like, I just came to Christ. Right. I'm trying to unlearn what I've been known my whole life. Right. Trying to listen and be obedient. Bro, like, you got to work with me. I can't do everything at one time. So I'm going to just start the podcast, do the audio, skip YouTube. Right. And when you ready for that to be a thing, you'll let it be a thing. But I remember when it was not a thing, I was saying, like, bro, I just pray, like, when it is a thing, I can go around the world and meet people and it be a thing where people share their story and we connect. And I'm like, right. So this being a thing now, it's like God giving me like, and it can seem like
it's so dope. Like when you see God answer prayers, but when things come full circle, like you said, you were doing it back then, but it really wasn't, like you couldn't give it all your attention. And now he's bringing it back around and he created a space for you to do it and give it all of your attention.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd just be like, some people could be like, well, y'all knew each other in Bible study. And I'm like, bro, that don't mean nothing, though, because in reality, we've been knowing each other for 2 years, and my whole family live here. And if we ain't never crossed paths before, you got to come out of that mindset of like, oh, that's coincidental. Because, you know, a lot of people be thinking like that. And it's like, nah, that's God.
It is God, because when I first met her in the Bible study, and she was talking... And she was just talking about whatever it was. I was like, this girl seems really, really cool. And I was like, okay. So we were going through group and I was like, you know, this was when she was in, I think, massage school, and she was, nursing and doing all these things. And I was like, I'm tired just listening to you. So like, I don't know how you doing it, but your strength is something for real. God gave you that strength, girl, because I was listening to you and I was tired. But I was like, that's really dope, you know, like she's really cool. So that's like, I ended up somehow finding her on socials. I think she might have followed Paige and then I somehow found it. So, and I have been praying for Sisters in Christ because I have a pretty dope online community, but like I've been praying for people that like I can meet in person and like see in person. It's not just like, I can only see them once a year because they live so far away. Like, that I can go pull up on, like, even if I have to drive, whatever the distance is, like, I can go pull up if I need to. And it's just so crazy because I'm like, wow, like, you did that. Like, when, it's just so, God is so cool. And, like, I never thought we would be sitting here today because, like we were saying earlier, like, we didn't really talk like that. We didn't, not for any other reason, but we just didn't know each other like that, like, outside a group. Sure. And, like, so once we like until this year, like that's when we really started talking, and I was like, this is so cool. Like now I'm married and you're married, and like you brought, like we can talk about that and just like different things that we're going through. So it's just like, it's so dope how God brings people back around, and like to be sitting here on your podcast, like this is a dream come true. I'm not even gonna lie, because the vision God gave me, I saw it, and now I'm walking in it. So and when you said she asked me to be on her podcast, I was like, I'm not qualified for this, but here we are. So here I am.
Period. Because I won't even qualify, you know, like to start it, but that's just goes back to like God being God, right? Like you don't have to have all these things you think, right? It's just you. If you okay living in authenticity, whatever that look like for you, then I feel like you good. Like this, because this is the foundation of the podcast. Meaning, you don't got to be where I'm at. I don't got to be where you at. But we both individuals, and we both chasing God, and we both whatever God need us to be. Because you Inez, I'm Samantha. I'm Samantha. You Inez. We could never be the same, even if we wanted to, because you an individual, I'm an individual, but God is moving in both our lives, you know?
And it's so crazy that you say that, because when I would see you like on TikTok just sharing a word or whatever and doing the podcast, I used to count myself out, because I was like, she has so much wisdom, there's no way I'm gonna do this, or like we're kind of in the same lane, like this is never gonna work. But God was like, you have your own lane and she has her own lane. Like the stuff that she's doing is going to be different than the stuff that you're doing, and you can coexist. Like you can do it together. So like the fact that I had, like, God had to really humble me and be like, stop comparing yourself to other people. Stop trying to run somebody else's race. Stop trying to be in somebody else's lane. Focus on your lane. And when you do that, then you'll win the race. Like you can't be stuck comparing yourself, and like don't count yourself out because somebody does the same thing as you.
Oh, for sure. It's not oversaturated. You know how you be like, oh, that's an oversaturated like business or whatever. People would try to steer you with those kind of words like, oh, you can't do that, she did this, she did that, or her fan base became a fan base based off of this or whatever. And I don't even, when I talk about like a fan base, I don't got fan bases, right? Because I'm not nobody to be. You don't got to be a fan for me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I just want you to be able to, something to resonate inside of you to let you know, like, if that girl sees something inside of me that maybe I don't see inside of myself. I don't call nobody my fans, because who am I?
Right.
Bro, like, I ain't even supposed to be in this position, but God saw something inside of me that allowed me to be here. So you not my fan. You might be in a place that I've been in before in my life where you need somebody to pull you and root for you and say, hey, you this, you that. Now I say you my sister, but you're not my fan. But people could look at people's following and be like, well, dang, she got 100,000 people following her, and I only got 2. How can this be a thing? But that's why my journey is to show people what a process look like. Because yes, I got 52,000 followers on TikTok, but if you check my track history, ain't nothing on TikTok talking about nothing. Like, it's all God breaking you, bro.
And it's so funny because I saw other people on TikTok, and this wasn't even like her, Samantha, or anybody, just like people I follow, like that do daily vlogs and do this and that and all of this stuff. I wanted to be that so bad. But the reason I wanted to be that wasn't God's reason, and he had to rip it apart. So, like, it's just funny how, like, you say we're not doing it for our audience, and that's so true. Like, if you're focused on the number, then you're not really doing it while you need to be doing it. So, like, God will take it from you. So, like, whenever God gives you something or you walk in something, just make sure your intentions are the right place. Because if I was doing it just for the follower count, it would lead me down the wrong path.
For sure. Yeah, because,
And something that I also was thinking, too, is like, say I wake up tomorrow and I have 1 million followers. Am I equipped and prepared to handle what comes with that? Because with the amount of following that people have comes influence. For sure. And you're now held to a higher standard. Yeah,
because you're a teacher. You know what the Bible talks about. Like, if you're a teacher, you held to a higher standard.
Like, yes. So, and that's the thing. And I was like, you know what? God, you're right. Like, I'm trying to move ahead of you. Like, I know what you gave me in the vision and what I'm going to be doing in the lane that I'm going to be doing it in. But like he has a little ways to go to prepare me for that, because I wouldn't have been ready. If I would have woke up tomorrow and had all these people, I'm not ready for that. So like I share what I can when I can now, but like when you pray for something, make sure you're prepared for what you pray for, because God will give it to you. But if you're not ready to handle it,
it's just gonna fall through your hands like quicksand, because that's why the process is what make you ready for the thing you praying for. But we be wanting to skip the process thinking, oh, I just need this and I need that. And God be like, sometimes,
gotta
and
trust
I was
the
just talking to
process.
my sister about this last night when we was driving to Maryland. I was like, sometimes God will give you what you want when you don't really want it, to show you that the thing you think you want, you really don't even want it.
And
you don't
this
want
is
it.
okay. And thank you, Holy Spirit, for allowing me to share this with them. But this is what, when it comes to motherhood, right? So for a long time, I didn't want kids, and I just was adamant about that. And then God changed my heart and the desires of my heart so that now I do. I want to be a mom. Like, I'm excited for whenever that chapter comes. But I got so riled up and so excited for that. And I was like, if I was pregnant tomorrow, like, I would not be ready. I want it, but do I really want it when I'm asking for it?
Yeah,
like
because
you
I
said,
think we want the thing, but sometimes you can want something, but it come with a million things you don't want with it. For sure.
And God had to sit me
do
down.
you
He
want
was
no
like,
sleep? Do you want this?
Do you want and
bro,
like that's something that he had to teach me. He was like, right now, like, yes, it's coming soon, right? But like, I want you to soak in the season that you're in, because you're not going to get it back. And like, yes, seasons can be hard and life can be hard, but like, soak up the season that you're in, because you're never going to get that season back. And so like, say you're in a really good season and just all things are going well, like life, your spiritual life, like everything's looking up, but it's like, cherish that, soak that in. Or like, even a season where you're not doing much, because for a while I felt like I was failing because I didn't have all the stuff on my plate. Like, when I stopped leading B groups and all that stuff, I was like, I'm not doing nothing. But God was like, yeah, you are. Like, I'm working in you right now, and when I'm working in you, you can't be doing all that over there.
Oh, for sure.
So like, enjoy the seasons that I'm taking stuff off your plate, because when I put it on, you better be ready.
And that just goes to show, like, you know how people be like, God won't put more on you than you can bear. That's really not biblical. Because, bro, how much more can I bear?
Right. And I be saying that every time. And it's so
like,
cool, because I learned that just like I have emotions, also does God. And he's jealous. He has a wrath. And you know what? I had a crazy experience where I saw God's wrath. Like, saw it. Saw it. And I was like, woo, okay. But anyway, he has emotions just like we do. And like, people think that you can't go to God and let your emotions out. There's a difference between cursing God, blasphemy, like degrading him, and there's a difference between you letting your emotions out.
It's like venting. There's a difference in complaining versus venting. I'm venting to you. But
so like, there'll be days where I'm crying and I'm like, God, I can't do this anymore. I'll be screaming, I'll be crying, I'll be riled up. But it's like, he wants that. He wants you to come that way, because like, he needs you to like surrender and
because
let
it's saying
him
in the
take
Bible,
control.
like, your weaknesses is made perfect. Like, that's when I use you the most, because I don't need nobody who think they know everything. I need somebody who can say, I'm broken, I need this, and I need you to do that for me. Those are the people I can use, because if you headstrong, if you not teachable, if you I'm good, you can't process your emotions, all this, I can't teach you what needs to be taught, because your heart is hardened. So when you in that state of mind, I'm able to use you, because you in your most vulnerable state, which means that's why when you in your vulnerable state, you should run to God and not to flesh, because the same way God can use you in your vulnerable state, the enemy can too.
Yeah, and that's so good. That's so good, because I would often, whenever I was feeling sad, I would run to the world first. And not like, and I'm not saying necessarily anything bad, like, but like people, like, instead of like, as soon as something went wrong in my day, I'll call my best friend Erica and be like, girl. And she'd be like, did you talk to God first?
Oh, that's so good, because that's so,
and I
like
was
God.
Like, no, I'm talking to you. Like, I'm trying to get you to help me figure it out. She's like, no, you need to. Like, so anytime I would call her with something, she'd be like, talk to God first and then come back to me. And so what she was teaching me was like, that's who you're supposed to call.
Oh, for real.
The good days, the bad days, whatever, you call him first. And then you can, like, God places people in your life to give you wisdom and to give you advice, to give you encouragement. But like, why aren't you depending on him for the answer first?
That's so good, because I remember when I was in a season, that's so crazy, because I be thinking like, my best friend Akil, he always be like, well, are you gonna go back and like talk about the old seasons of the podcast? And I'm like, no, like you got to go back to just the audio where there is no visual content, because like I'm not in that season no more.
Yeah.
But it's so good how God will still pull things from that previous time to allow it to be seen on the visual content for people to get insight on that. When you say that though, I was in a season and God was like, stop running to everybody first for an answer. You need to run to me first, because I don't mind you vocalizing and venting to your friends, but you look to your friends for an answer.
Yes.
And that's a problem for me, because you ask, what if they tell you this? What if they tell you that? That's what you're going to go with when they don't even know nothing I'm doing in your life. So you need to run to me first, because that let me know you looking for me for the answer. And then I don't mind if you go and vent to your friends, because now that's what community is for.
And that's why I'm so glad that she did that, because growing up, I was codependent on people. I just was like, anything I did, I had to check it first. Like whether that was, it could be the smallest thing, like getting my hair straightened. I don't know. And I would be like, Mom, can I do this? Or just whatever. So like when God finally placed people in my life that I could go to in a comfortable, safe space to be like, yo, blah, blah, whatever's happening, I started leaning on them more than I was leaning on God. And God was like, and that's why I'm grateful that my friend Erica was doing that to me, because she was like, God speaking to you. Like he's telling you, you need to go to him first. Like I will be here all day long. I will be here for you, whatever you need, but I can't talk to you until you talk to him.
Yeah.
Like, and
shout out to her, because that, for one, that take a lot to say, like, like I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Especially like when somebody in a crisis, you know what I'm saying? Or that's your gift, like, because obviously you call her for a reason, because you knew she had something for you.
Yeah.
She like, nah, I know you calling me for this or whatever, but I'm going to refer you back to who the person that's going to really be able to help you. And I ain't going to be able to do that. And it take a lot, because sometimes we be wanting to be used by God so much that we'll just operate in that gift, and he be like, she ain't even run that by me. That was your time to redirect her back to me, but you wanted to. And it's not to say it's a bad thing. Right. It's just sometimes you have to separate what I want to do versus what I should do. And so I want to be able to give you advice, but did you go and ask God? And because you didn't, I need to say, hey, you need to go talk to God first, because I don't have the answer you looking for. It don't matter if I use all the words in the dictionary. Right. Because I don't have that for you. God got that for you. But one thing about it is I can help you and guide you when you feeling these emotions. Right. But the answer not coming from me.
And it's funny because when I would call her too, and she discerned spirits, so like she was able to pick up on even just the tone of my voice. She would know if I'm like upset, if I'm mad. She would know. She would, if I'm sick, like she knows. And she, before I would even talk, she would know where I was going with what I was gonna say. So she'd stop me before I could even say anything. And I'm so grateful for that, because it really did teach me, like, I have to go to him first. And even if he doesn't give me the answer right away, I have to be at peace with that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so what I do now is, like, I'll just, whenever I'm going through something, I'll just be like, God, I'm here. Like, I'm just going through it or whatever. And he may not say anything. He may just let me sit in silence with him for a minute. He may speak to me through a song. He may, talk directly where I can hear his voice, whatever. But I may not always get the answer right away. And that's what I had to learn to be okay with. Like, but he does want my feelings. He wants me to come with him and give him what I'm feeling. And so I've been getting better at that. And it is truly, I've seen the difference in just like how I respond to things, because I'm checking first.
And see, I think when it kind of lead into what we was going to talk about today, I'm so glad, like, so sometimes I'll be like, God, how is we going to introduce the topic, type thing. But it's always God, because it always flows so good that it just lead into that. But what you were saying was, it piggyback into what we was talking about like what we want to talk about, rejection and disappointment today. Because when you don't seek God first, you seek other people and they knowledge and they wisdom on what I'm doing in your life, you're going to always be rejected or you're going to always be disappointed because I could be in community with 50,000 folks, but the only person who really know what is going on with my life is God.
Yeah.
God know what
Everything.
he want to do with me, regardless. Yeah, people can intentions be pure.
You're
People,
right.
people want to see you win. People want to do this and that, but they ultimately do not know the plans that God has for your
Right.
life. And so when you seek them, you're going to be here, you're going to be there, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be upset, you're going to be
And
all
it's
these
so
things.
funny because I never saw it from this revelation until you were just speaking. Whenever I would call her and she would tell me that, I would get pissed. I would be so upset with her because I'd be like, I came to you for help and you're not helping me. And then once I started doing what she was saying I needed to do by seeking God first, he's like, why are you mad at her? She's doing what I told her to tell you. Like, she's right by telling you to come to me first. And what I realized after a while is that she wasn't coming for me. She was helping me because she's like, God needs to be your priority and he needs to be your source, like who you go to. But you keep coming to me. So like, I need to redirect you to him. And so like, she wasn't rejecting me, even though I felt like that. I felt like, okay. So for a while I would get mad and I would stop calling her for stuff. Like, cause I talk to her pretty often. And so I'd be like mad and I wouldn't be talking to her. And it's like, because I felt that that's what it was feeling because she was saying no. And eventually we would talk, like after I talked to God, I would go back to her and we would talk it out and stuff. But it's funny because that's what that was for me. Like, that's why I would get so upset because you telling me no, I'm so used to no that like I can't hear it anymore. Like I don't want to hear it anymore.
But when you discern what no mean, I think that's another reason. It go back to when we think about like disappointment and rejection. When I was little or in not even really following God, not even just necessarily little, but when I won't follow God, I would come across people and I would be like, they would give me something and I would be like, you sound like such and such. And I'm like, But the thing about it was, in order for God to teach you, for you to be teachable, for you to be able to grow, you can't just hear words. You have to use discernment to measure people by their fruit. Because I would come across people who sound like my mother. And I would be like, whoa, you sound like my mama, bro. And like, me and my mama don't got that relationship where like, because it's never from a point of wanting to see me win. So I'm in my bag right now. And I feel like you don't want to see me win because you just said something that came out of my mama mouth. And God was like, whoa. If you don't know how to measure people by their fruit and their character and who they are, you going to always hear similar words. And you going to be like, and you going to always pass up good people who I sent for you to come across.
And that's what I'm learning about Satan, right? Because just like we know the word, he knows the word. So like in that sense of the word, like he was taking what was familiar to you and you thought you were hearing it in other people because he thought if you were hearing it
would cause you to shut down.
It would cause you to shut down. But instead you're like, you know what? Like I'm going to go back to God and we're going to figure this out because that's not it.
And I know, and I know it's not but God, and I'm thankful for that wisdom because I teach it now when because you can't teach something God hasn't taught you.
Yeah.
And
Mike Todd said that, I think, when I first was watching him back in the day. He was saying, like, everything that I talk about is something that I struggle with.
Oh, for sure. That's what I talk about all the time. I say, I'm not telling, none of this podcast stuff is for show. I'm not, it's not no facade. It's not nothing to just do. Because I know podcast is like a little aesthetic now. Everybody got a podcast.
Yeah.
But are you teaching something you've learned? And does it align with the will of God for your life? Because you can't, I'm a teacher now. It says in the Bible you held to a different standard. I don't got to be in no pulpit. I don't got to be in front of no podium. This is something people come to learn who God is. And if I'm their first encounter of God, are you going to be enough for them to follow me?
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. And so earlier, her and I were having a conversation and I was telling her that this is the year that I want to apply the word and walk the word out. And I was like, because God has definitely used me to relay some messages to some people, right? Like whether that's on TikTok, Instagram, whatever. He's used me for words. But if people see me posting my Bible readings and all that stuff on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, but what fruit do they see?
Oh, yeah.
They see me blacked out at the bar, or they see me gossiping every day, or where that's not good fruit. So, and that's something that stuck with me is like, you could be the first Bible people meet. And so how are you acting? And that's why this year I really want to put not pressure, but I really want to work and make that my main focus is just, am I a good example of the first Bible that people meet?
Yeah, because imagine if you that goes back to what we was just saying a while ago. If you can't teach something you ain't been taught. Let's say that they resonate with you and they like, oh, she showed me something about God that made me want to follow God. Now they digging into your life.
Right.
These people on this podcast, bro, I run across people in person who I ain't never met, and they say, I follow you on TikTok. And I'm like, by the God's grace.
Listen, the anxiety,
grace,
the social anxiety in me be like, girl, if you don't back away.
It's like by God's grace, like,
but it's also so
knowing
cool,
that I'm who
yeah.
I am, and I fall short, and I talk about things because imagine you living a double life and somebody say, I follow you on Instagram, but you don't live the life you live on TikTok. Imagine that.
Yes.
And the thing about my Instagram is I never deleted anything from my anything from when I was following God, because I want you to know,
to see,
and
like,
to see how my life changed
growth
from who I was and who I thought I wanted to be versus who I am and who I desire to be right now. Because we get this in this life with God and we like, oh, I want to delete everything that don't look like God. Nah, I want everything to show you that whoever you are right now, God still use you. Even if you in the club, you smoking weed, you getting drunk every night, you getting high to go to church, whatever that look like. Go look on my Instagram to go see that. I was posted in some Daisy Dukes, hanging out with the girls. And I ain't like that no more. But I want you to be able to go and show that God will still use you.
God is so cool. God is so cool because I stopped posting for a lot of reasons, because one, the double life thing, right? Not that I'm two completely different people. However, I haven't gotten to a point yet where I'm walking out the word in a way that, like, I don't have to be perfect, but I want to be a good example. And that comes with falls. Don't get me wrong.
No,
that comes with falling short. However, if I'm continuing in something and there's no change, why do I need to be? I don't want to be posting the scripture on here, but then over here I'm gossiping every day. And I'm not saying I'll never not gossip again, because we all fall short, but I'm saying I want to get to a better place because I want to share the transparent things with people. And one of the things that I haven't spoke about ever, I don't think, is my sexual sin issues. And I was leading a Bible study. I was posting like messages, on Instagram and stuff, but almost every week I would masturbate, I would watch porn, I would do all these things, and I was doing that in the dark. And I would talk about it to, like, if I would reach out to you or Paige or, just my community, I would reach out to them and be like, hey, this happened, blah, 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 for the accountability and so that they can pray with me, which is great. But I've learned that I've got to share that story too.
Oh, for sure.
And that's
people that's doing that.
Like, but
the thing about it is, people think when you come to Christ, you stop all these bad things overnight, and you don't. For one, that's when the enemy really after you, because you done turned your back on me.
You know what's funny that you say that, because growing up, I was in the church, but I wasn't in the church, if that makes sense. And I think we'll dive more into this when we talk about marriage and stuff like that, because it's a part of my relationship story. But I got back into church when I first got together with my now husband or whatever. And I had gotten baptized, I think, as a kid, maybe, I think, or like christened or whatever they do for babies. I don't know, because I was young. And so I started watching Transformation Church, and I was like, you know what? I want to get rebaptized. So I'm in the tub at my apartment, and I was like, Isaiah, can you do this for me? And so we did it. And literally after that, it was like downward spiral. It was like pouring all the time. It was... I don't know if fornication's the right word, but it was doing things I shouldn't have been doing without a ring on my finger, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so, like, and I used to try to justify it too. I used to try to justify my sin. Like, because it's not this, it doesn't count.
Oh.
And it's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, it's all the same thing.
That's how I am about my cousin. I used to be like that about my cousin. And it's so crazy because I was, a few weeks ago, God was like, when I was fasting, I was doing Daniel's fast. And God was like, you've been saying you're going to stop cussing for like a year now. Like, you've been using it you've been playing. You've been saying, well, I don't cuss that much, as a way to continue to keep cussing. And I told you, he gave me the chapter of James where it talk about your mouth. How you the same mouth you use.
James is a good one.
To bless people, you use to curse things as well. And how can the same things come out of your mouth?
The power of the tongue is life.
I used to be like, well, God, I don't cuss that much. I don't cuss no more. I don't cuss that much often. And my husband was like, if you can turn it off when you do that podcast or you go to church, you can turn it off when you are in real life, because it's not something you can't not do, because you don't do it when you do something you know it's of funny. God.
You know it's funny,
and
when I was in the height of my, now that I'm married, I wouldn't say that I struggle with the sexual sin part like anymore or as much, because even though I'm married, it comes in different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But whenever I would do the porn, do the masturbation, I would blame it on what I was going through. I would blame it on stress at work. My mom got mad at me. I just would blame all of these things, when really what I should have been doing is seeking God. And the craziest part is like, when you know better, you're supposed to do better, right? So I would reach out to people to try to hold me accountable. And one day, someone that I was talking to was like, you keep reaching out, but have you applied anything that I told you to do the first time?
That's good.
And she was like, you say you're struggling with sexual sin, but when I gave you tips on what to do when you're in the middle of it, you're not doing it. And then you wonder why you're still falling.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, and Tim Ross said this on his podcast when he was talking about, like, how he was molested on this stuff. He was talking about how, like, he would be in the middle of something and he would just grab his Bible, like, physically grab it and just call on God. And so, like, that, like, if I would have done that, the less times I would have fell in that area. But was I applying?
That's why I say in the word, take all things captive and bring it to God, because if anything can plant in your head, but if you say, God, before I act, I'm going to run to you and I'm going to ask you, did this apply to your will for my life? And he'll be able to grab you in that moment and say, I know these your thoughts, but whoa, hold on. Yeah. You know, that's just kind of like you having a safe space with your child, and your child say, well, I'm thinking about having sex. I ain't done it yet, but I'm thinking about it. And I'll be like, well, you know, these are the things to consider, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It might change their whole, they say, whoa, I really ain't think I'm ready like I thought. The same thing when it come to God. God, like, if you would have just brought me that, I would have been able to tell you, like, that's not this and that's not that, you know? And I think too, like, being able to talk about that kind of stuff, and you know, like, it's other people who do it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's so funny because when you're bonded to something, and not only when you're bonded to something, but when you're gonna break it for generations, it takes longer for the chain to be broken. And so I was wondering, like, why I keep going back to this issue, and it's like, because the people that are going to come behind me, I'm going to be able to share my story and it's going to help them break free. So it's so crazy because I had all of the resources. Like, I had people that would tell me, because it would happen when I was home alone, when I was stressed out, when I was super anxious, when I just felt out of control that I could control. I could pick up my computer or whatever. And so one of my friends was like, well, why don't you not be home alone? If you know there's a time where Isaiah's not going to be home, or just like whatever, why don't you just not go home? Or if you have to sit in your car, go to your grandma's house, go do something. If you do that, then you're not going to do that. But I was choosing to disobey, and I was choosing to do something I know I shouldn't have done. But the cool thing about it is God will meet you right there, because I will never forget this. This was probably one of the last times that it happened to me. And I was laying there in the middle, and he was like, I'm right here with you. And I was like, that's gross. And knowing that he sees everything, I was like, that's a little wild. So, but then I was like, that's good that you're here, because then I can be like, okay, you know what? I'm in this, but doesn't mean, just because you started doesn't mean you have to finish.
Nah, for sure.
And so, like, he can meet you where you're at, no matter where that's at. Whether that's at the bar, smoking weed, at your computer with porn, whatever that looks like for you. He will meet you right there in the middle, no matter whether you want to see him or not.
Yeah. And the thing about it, too, when you were saying, you talking about what you're going through and stuff like that, and it being able to set people free. These are things that people don't talk about, right? People think, oh, she show up for Bible study every day. She do this. She show up every week. She ain't going through nothing. She this, but that's why this platform is this platform, because I'm like, it's to let you know that I've submitted to the call that's on my life. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Nope. Do I have flaws? Absolutely.
And that's hard for someone who's a perfectionist, to know that you're never going to be perfect. No matter what you do, you're never going to be Jesus. It's like, you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because God wants you anyway. And a lot of times when I am going through that, I'll remind myself of the scriptures where there's one. If I find it, I'll share it with you so you can put it in somewhere for them to read it. But it was talking about how he chose you with joy, like from day one, and he wants you. He literally wants you, and he knitted you together, you specifically. And so, like, I have to remind myself of that, because I'm like, despite my fall, there's a reason that I'm here. And so I will never forget this. One time I was going through it with, like, sexual sin and stuff, and I had texted my mother-in-law, and I was like, what do I do? And she was like, talk about it. And she told me, she said, God cannot heal what you don't reveal. So the more you don't talk about it, the more you're going to be stuck where you're at. And that's why the
enemy gets you.
And that is the moment where God unlocked my voice. So I'm in a place now where I have to choose discernment on what I share, because there are things that God gives me that needs to stay with me, or with me and my husband, whatever. But that's why I'm so open now, because the more that I talk about it, the freer I become from whatever those things are. Yeah,
because it's saying in the word, we set free by the power of our testimony, in the word of God. And people be like, well, the testimony you talk about it after you go through the test. That's not necessarily true, because you talk about it while you're going through the test as well, because the test, if not, the test will take you out, because if the enemy know that that's something you struggle with, and he like, oh, don't talk about it. For one, you're going to wrestle with them thoughts. The way he sit and plant stuff in your head, if faith is the size of a mustard seed,
right,
all the enemy need is a mustard seed to grow whatever he need to grow as well. And so when you talk about it out loud, this what me and my homegirl was talking about in the last podcast that we had did. I'm letting the devil know that I know this where you gonna taunt me at. I already know that. And so I'm letting you know that I know, because I told you.
And you know what? That's such a powerful tool to have in your tool belt, knowing that So I'm trying to think of a good example in my life personally, but when, like, okay, so finances, for example, I stand 10 toes down because I've seen God do it. He can't get me there anymore. So now
he'll play on another. Yep, he'll play on another area of your life. Yep,
that I haven't been delivered. And okay, so this is crazy too. One time, so there be some books, right, that you really shouldn't be reading if you not
not Zane books.
If you not
I'm
married, just because it's stimulating. Even though you're not watching it, it's stimulating.
It's still something playing in your head.
So when I was when I was in the height of just like struggling with porn and all that stuff, I would read these books that would have explicit details in it to stimulate me to, get that result. And I think maybe the next day I flipped to somewhere in the Bible and it was like, just because you read it doesn't make it different. And like, it didn't say that exactly, so I'll have to find the verse, but like,
no, I know what you mean. It's just like your thoughts. Like if you just say it in your head.
You're saying you're trying to justify you're wrong because you're reading it and not watching it. But you're still consuming the same content. So it's like, you don't try to get out of that. It's wrong.
It's just
wrong,
like, I might not use the front door to go in the house, but I use the back door.
Yes.
Or if I can't use the back door, I'll just go through the window. It's just like that. It's like you're pacifying what I told you is not it.
Yes.
Because it might not be, but it's because we don't want to come out. We like what we do. And I say that for myself, like cussing. I'm like, God, it sounded a little good when I put a little words. My kids don't move their feet till you put a little word on it. Like a few little seasoned words. And he like, those same words that you think is moving their feet might tear them down too. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not, imagine if they start talking to their children like that. And then you in another season of your life where you like, why are you talking to them like that? And they say, well, you used to talk to us like that.
Yeah.
And he was like,
but you got
to come out of that.
You know what's so cool about our like generation or whatever you want to call it is that we are pursuing the resources that are available so that we're no longer like that.
Okay, that's cool. That's true.
Do you know how okay, so you're saying you cuss or whatever with your kids and your mom may have cussed to you, right? Because that was done to her. But we're in a stage where we can learn better and know better to do better.
I feel like we the more generation that's trying to overcome our trauma.
Right.
We like, this ended with us. Like, we not carrying this on no more, bro. It's heavy. This cross is heavy. We don't want these burdens that we get when we got the obligation and the free will and the access to bring it to God. Literally, I don't know if you ever heard of this. Like, what a friend we have in Jesus. It's like, oh, what a friend we have in Jesus. Oh, what things we often forfeit when we don't bring things to God in prayer. The burdens and things we choose to carry.
Yeah. And that's like we were talking about that TikTok earlier, missing what God has for you because you're so focused on what you want for yourself. Like that ties into what we were talking about earlier. Like stop being so focused on what you want and pursue what God wants.
For real,
like,
because when you be wanting certain stuff,
even if you're afraid, even if it doesn't make sense, you're going to come out so much better. Like, one of my fears is flying, right? In heights. And so we went to Las Vegas in 2020. And that's the year that I had saw that TikTok that I was talking about, like where you don't want to miss out. And that's when I had the like revelation that I need to get outside my comfort zone, get outside my box, really start living. Because God created us to live an abundant life.
Oh, for sure.
And like, why am I not walking in that? So I was like, I'm signing up for zip lining. And I will never forget, we get there. So I wanted to do the one where you lay like down, like flat, like Superman. Okay. And then they had the other option where you could just sit up straight and go across the thing. And so I get there and she was like, because you're laying down, you have to go 3 flights higher.
It makes sense because you stoop down, right? You submerge a little.
I was about to cancel it because I'm like, I'm already worked up that I'm doing this in the first place, and now you're telling me I have to be higher than. So I was like, okay. And she was like,
if you crazy revelation, go keep going.
And so I was talking to the lady. I was like, can I change it? When I found out that was the case, she's like, yeah, but you can wait 3 hours too. And I was like, I done spent my money on this. I am not waiting. Whatever. So I get up to go. I go up the stairs and I'm standing next to this group of like friends or whatever. And the one girl next to me, she's like, I'm afraid to. Like, I don't really like heights like that. So I'm like, okay, we both afraid, but here we are. And so they hook me up to the thing, and they don't tell you when you're about to go, but like they open this cage or whatever, kind of. It's almost like a garage door, but like it was a half thing. And it opened, and I was like, oh, shucks. I'm here now. I can't get out of this now. Like, I'm all hooked up. And the rope just released, and I was like thrown into it. And I was like, I came out, and I was like, I want to do it again. Like, you never know what you're missing if you don't try it once.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, what that taught me is, like, you can do it and you can do it afraid. But I bet you, once you do it, you're gonna love it.
Now, when you was talking, I got this crazy revelation. It almost, like, it low-key, like, made me emotional. Like, when you was, like, you had to go up 3 feet higher. When you, like, you had to be submerged like 3 feet lower because, you know, you hanging now versus sitting. You actually hanging. So they have to make up for the, you know, distance or whatever.
Right.
But because you want to be, you want to be at a higher altitude to experience this level of experience. It's just, God literally gave me the revelation of, if you want this calling on your life, you gotta be submerged deeper than where the calling is at, because if you want the height that I'm taking you, you gotta go through the trenches. Because if you don't, then you're not gonna be able to get.
I'm getting so emotional because
this is the revelation that God literally, when you were saying it,
I'm getting so emotional because
that's crazy.
God gave me the vision for where I'm going to end up in purpose and calling. And it's a great one. Okay. But he never said the steps on how to get there. He never said He never said how I'm going to get you there, what you're going to get there. And I have been in a season. I've been in 2 seasons at the same time. Okay. I'm in a blissful season because I just got married and I love it there. But I'm in a rough season because of my finances, because of just my, like, not stirring in my body well, just like all of the things. So I'm going through it. Like, it is hard to live paycheck to paycheck. It's hard to make less than what your bills are. It's hard. But I'm going through these things because the test produces the testimony. And so when you said that, I'm like, I'm out here wanting to be there. Like, I want to be there so bad, but I don't, because I need to go through all of this stuff, no matter how hard it is.
3 feet lower
to go higher
than the calling. But and it's so crazy because when you were saying it, God just gave me this revelation, like,
because I needed to hear it.
And it's like, you want to be here, but you don't want to do the 3-foot drop because it's gonna allow you to have to go through things, and you like, whoa, but I said I want to be here. And God, like, this is necessary, because if I didn't drop you 3 feet, you wouldn't have been able to get on this ride, bro. She just said you could have waited 3 hours. If you don't want it, get out of the way.
Yes.
If you don't want it, I'll use somebody else.
Yeah.
Do you want to be dropped 3 feet to go through it? Because also when you said, but when I went through it and I flew, it's an experience that I wanted again. That just, it was like, that's how God used it. You want the calling, you don't want to drop the 3 feet, because the 3 feet mean you got to go through the things that you be like, well, why I'm doing this, why I'm doing that. But ultimately, it's required for you to get the experience that you'll want to go through again.
That is such a word, and I'm so glad God gave me that revelation, because I needed to hear it, because it just,
dang, that's crazy.
It just strengthened and renewed my faith, because it's like, I know where I'm going. How I'm going to get there, I don't know. But it's just such a faith reminder for me, because I literally was doing my devotional, I think it was this morning, and it was like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And I just needed that reminder of like, yes, I'm going through the trenches, but not for long. My favorite Bible verse is Romans 8:18. Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory you will reveal to us later.
I'm telling you.
And I wanted to get married on that 8:18, but anyway, because that's my favorite scripture. But anyway, it's just like I'm sitting there like going through it, and I'm like, I'm going through it for a reason. And so I have to not quit, and I have to not give up, because I'm going to come out on the other side so much better.
And it's so crazy because as you was talking about it, it literally, God was just like, it was just like, I was like, dang, like, you eat me up a little bit. Like, it allowed me to see, because it's so crazy how God will use two people to give one revelation where both people can apply it, right?
Yeah.
Because you needed to keep you anchored in this season to show you that what you're going through is that it's for me, it's to show me that everything you've been telling these folks, keep telling these folks that.
Yeah.
Keep standing 10 toes down on what I told you, because when you surrounded by people who don't see it, who don't believe it, who ain't encountered me on a level like that, I don't care. I don't care if it's just you, bro. Yeah. Stand on what I told you and allow yourself to believe what I said is what I said. And when he gave me that revelation, I was like, I done been in
it's so funny that you say that, because
I'm in there.
Although I don't like to say the word broke, but I like to say in between blessings, right? Sorry, my nose is all crazy. But something I stand on 10 toes down for is my finances, because I've seen God do it. And like my husband and I were talking, he was like, you should get a part-time job. And I'm like, I'm not going back there. I was there. God brought me out of that. I'm not going back there. And he ain't telling me to go back there. Because if I went back there, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing now. And the other day he came to me and he was like, God's about to use you to show me. And I was like, okay, that's it. I can't stress about it anymore.
It's always a 2-for-1 special. I say that all the time. And it's so crazy because that just is so, when I be sitting here, I be just thinking like.
Not only is it that the revelation, what you were saying, but also the revelation of you have to be able, when God calls you to do something, 99% of the times the thing he's going to ask you to do is something that scares you, something that makes you uncomfortable, something that you're not familiar with. But you have to be willing to be obedient, because you're going to come out happier.
Yeah.
And granted, I mean, ziplining, I don't think that was something, like, God didn't tell me to zip line, but he did now, because there's a reason. The revelation from the zip line.
That's what I'm saying. Like the 2-for-1 special, when I tell people God used the 2-for-1 special. And it's so crazy because I talked about this in the season that I was in last year. And it was the hardest season of my life. And I was thinking like, God, I'm in the happiest moments of my life. How am I enduring the hardest season of my life? Like, but it was God gave me revelation. I never do anything just for you. It's a 2-for-1 special. You need to see God one way, but somebody need to see God another way. And so what I'm going to use is both of y'all in one encounterment, 2 different ways. That's why I'm needing this, whatever you say.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
That's why. Because what I am to you, I'm to you. But I'm also the same God another way to somebody else. So I'm finna use both of y'all to show you who I am in 2 different ways. And I say that to say, like, you know, when I was in that season of my life, I was like, God gonna do this and God gonna do that. That person needed to see, the kid's daddy needed to see that it don't matter how hard you fight me, bro. You not never gonna come out on top because your motive wrong. God is my source. Right. You don't dictate my life. I don't even dictate my life. So how you gonna dictate my life?
Well,
you know
and that's like, that ties back into that song that I've been listening to lately. And it's like, you can't listen to what they say, but what he says. And like, a lot of times when people struggle with being obedient to God, it's not because they struggle, but because they've listened to so many other people.
That's why we hate to be in the silence, in the isolation season, in the moments where God is like, oh, it's just me and you. We hate it so bad because
But
we feel like we
it
going
has
in.
to be just you
oh
and
yeah.
him, because if you, like, even if it was you talking to me about something, and I'm not gonna, because of my faith, I'm not ever gonna discourage you from doing something, because I've learned for myself, like, God will call you to do some crazy things, but I could say just one thing, even if it's not wrong, that could steer you off. So like a lot of times it does have to be just you and God, or like you, God, and your spouse.
But that's why we don't
whatever.
like it, because it's, well, I don't know this, because God don't give you all the details. He say, this what we doing this season. Sit here and I'll be back. And you be like, whoa, hold on.
Oh my gosh,
You be
Samantha.
like, sit here and I'll be back.
Stop.
And
because,
I'm like, whoa, that's crazy.
listen, you know how we were talking about disappointment? I have something about this that ties back into it. So growing up, I set myself up for disappointment, because whenever I heard something, right? Whether that was my mom was taking me to the mall, or my dad or my stepdad. Well, I don't even know if he's whatever. I'll just call him stepdad. He would take me here or do this for me. Whenever he would say it, I would believe it. And then I would get so excited that I'd go around telling everybody, oh my God, like tomorrow I'm going to the store. Tomorrow I'm going to do this. Tomorrow I'm getting this. And it would never happen. So that's why God says some things are just for you and him, because like me, if you running around telling everybody, he might not allow it to happen, because the people that know you don't know.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of a little bit of where my disappointment started, is like I would get so excited about something and I would be so joyful and I would tell everybody. I heard a word, I believed it, I got excited, and then I would be let down because it wouldn't come to pass. So how do you think that correlates to me trusting God? Because he gives me a word. Some stuff doesn't happen, and that's okay, because just like Job, he allowed things to happen to Job. So like it's okay when stuff doesn't happen, but like you set yourself up for disappointment because you ran around doing all that stuff. You ran around telling people.
But it's just like when I was like, some seasons God don't give you everything. He just say, here, sit here. I'll be back. And we don't like those moments because we want to know when it's coming, what time it's arriving, where the shipping at, who's shipping it, where the tracking, what date it's gonna be here, what time. We want all of those things, and God be like, I ain't doing that. Like I'm not doing that. And so that's why we want to be around people all the time, where we be like, oh well, what you think? What you think I should do? Like, well, what you think? And in those seasons, when you realize that's where God, even though when God take away the distractions and it's just you and him, you get to hear God more clearly. You know, you get to experience God at a level that you would have never experienced him.
On hearing God, it's like when I would hear somebody tell me something, like I said, like whether that was somebody who's taking me to the store, somebody's taking me out to eat, whatever, whenever I would hear that, did I ever listen to the full sentence before I got excited and started telling people? So did I hear clearly what was being said? Because if I just heard the idea and I was so excited and I ran with it, like the person could have said, if I have time tomorrow, I'll take you to the store. But because all I heard was what I wanted to hear, I'll take you to the store.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you set yourself up for disappointment. If you're not taking the time to listen clearly. And so that's why it's important to just be mindful of who you tell what to, because that can set you up for disappointment too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's why, hey. And so that's why when you talking to people about certain stuff, it just goes to say everybody can't. It go back earlier though, like when we was talking about I could say something to you, and if I told you something, you could sound like my mama, right? And I could be like, oh, you discouraging me too. Meanwhile, that person being used by God, the God saying that's not what we doing right now, but because I've heard that's not what we doing right now from somebody who's never wanted it to ever be my time, I could be like, oh, you doing the same thing. And now I'm disappointed and let down and feeling rejected when God like, why you feeling like that? Like, why you doing that? Yeah. Measure that person by who they are. That's my friend. They ain't never steer me wrong. They might not say things that I like to hear, but they fruit right. They follow God. They abide by the things that they need to abide by, and they doing the best they can. So that's where it divides
you
from
said
that.
Measure them by where they're at, because my manager at work now, when I first met her, I would tell her about just like differences that I had with people, and she was like, you've got to measure people where they are, where they are, and keep them where you measure them to. Like, not everybody can have the whole yard of you.
Oh yeah, that's why
So
it's
like,
saying
if
in the
they
Bible,
only measure up to an inch,
it's
only
saying in
give
the
them
Bible
an
to
inch.
measure people by their fruit and not by what they're talking about. Like it says, you measure people by their fruit, because
And it's okay to keep people where they're at. Some people just can't be.
and because I think about, like, let's say, like, I said this on the previous episode. Good advice don't mean it's my advice. You can have good advice for somebody, and that be amazing advice. But if it don't align with God's will for me,
Right.
I can't use that advice no matter how good it is, right? So when you measure, like, you have to be able to use discernment to say, oh, well, this is for me, or this ain't for me, or whatever the case may be, you know.
And the more you pursue him, the stronger your discernment gonna get. Because when it gets strong, ain't no turning it off.
Yeah, and it's a blessing, because I feel like discernment help you with disappointment, and it help you with rejection, because you say, God didn't say no, he just said not right now.
Stop. Okay, so when I was thinking about being a mom, right, I was so excited for it. And I was telling my husband, I was like, I'm so excited for this, blah, blah, blah. Because he told me it's going to happen soon. And he didn't that's why he doesn't give specific details, because he doesn't want to disappoint you. That's why he doesn't always give you details either, specifically, unless it's something that he requires of you by a certain time. Because there are things in life that he will have specifications on. But a lot of times he doesn't, because he loves you so much that he doesn't want to disappoint you. And he gave you a timeline and it didn't come to pass. You're going to be like, now I'm mad at you, like, because you ain't come through. And so anyway, I was talking to him about it. He's like, I know you're excited. My husband goes, I know you're excited about this, but when he was telling you this, were you hearing your voice, the enemy's voice, or God's voice? Because when you got excited, you might not have listened to all of what he said. You could have took what you wanted and ran. So did you hear him clear? And I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, I was really excited about something. And I get on a call with one of my mentors, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm in my preparing for motherhood season. Like, I didn't say I was pregnant, because I'm not pregnant, but I didn't say anything like that. I just said I'm preparing for it, because I know eventually it's coming. So, and she was like, oh, I knew. I already knew it was soon. Like, I knew. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, you knew. And like, the reason why I didn't go to her about it is because God didn't want me to know specific things about it until I was ready to receive it. And it's just crazy how he works, man.
Yeah, because he know us better than we know ourselves. And
literally,
sometimes we be thinking, like, God be like, if I tell you all the details, I don't think we be thinking like, oh, you be like, oh, God, I ain't gonna idolize that. And God be like, oh, you will. I know you.
Yeah, that's what I was doing with that. And
you idolize the word that I told you. You idolize the presence over my presence. Like, I should be able to tell you something and you still focus on me, keep your eye on me, and not the thing that I told you. Yeah. Because if you keep your eye on me, then I will lead you to the thing that I told you.
Right, but if you keep your eye on the thing, you're missing him.
Going to start hearing your own thing, because now you lean into your own understanding. Because you so focused on this one thing that you'll do anything to get there.
Yeah.
But if you focus on me, you'll do the necessary things.
I learned my lesson real quick about you trying to control the situation. God don't like that. He will put you in a situation where to get you to realize you can't be in control. Like, when it came to finances for me, like, there would be times that I would try to apply for loans and all that stuff, but it's like, when I'm doing that, I'm not trusting what God told me.
Oh yeah, because you trying to it's like a plan B.
A backup.
Yeah, it's like a backup. Yeah.
Didn't Mike Ty do something about deleting the backup plan?
That was the thing that delivered me from nursing. He was like, no plan B. Like, God told me, he was like, if you don't never fully trust what I have for you, you're going to always have a plan B. Which means you saying, well, if God don't stand on his word, I got something to fall back on. So you telling me I'm a God that might not fulfill what I said I'm going to fulfill.
Yeah.
So what you going to do? I left nursing. I ain't went back since.
Yeah, I remember you were a busy girl.
Yeah, and it's just but it's so good, and it's so crazy because we was thinking like, oh, we're gonna talk about rejection and all this, and we kind of have touched like bases on it or whatever. But like, it's so crazy because we be thinking, I just every time I do a podcast, I say, I just want God to move. Yep. Like, God, do your thing. Like, whatever you feel. I always say, like, what is your baseline for what you feel you want to talk about? Mm-hmm. And I go from there. But one thing about it is, if they know, they can come downstairs if they.
Yeah,
if they
I told them.
Okay. One thing about it is God gonna be God and he gonna do what he want to do. And so I feel like the conversation that we had plans for other things, right? But it kind of like, it just flows so good that it just, how you know it was nothing of,
and it
but
was the
of
conversation
God
that needed to be had.
Exactly. And so I know like those moments we be thinking like, hey, how you doing? hey, how you doing?
Ooh, I love it.
Oh, that's so cute, right?
We loved a theme party. I love that.
That looks so cute. So I know, you know, like sometimes we be thinking like, oh, well, we gonna go in and do this and do that, and then
because we have our own idea, but God already knew the conversation before we had it,
right? Because imagine if you never would have talked about the zip lining, he'd have never gave me that revelation nor you. And when I said God do things in twos, that was something we both needed, right? And so I always just be like, God, just move. I just wanna have a baseline of what they feel comfortable doing, because this platform just wants you to be inviting, right, and be welcoming, to let you know like you seen, you value, you heard, and God see you, and God want to use you. And so when you come on this platform, I want you to feel comfortable with what you feel like you could talk about. Right. But I do know God gonna use who God gonna use, and God gonna do what God gonna do. And so we could start off one way, and God be like, oh, we finna take a pivot.
Yeah, we pivoting.
And so that's kind of how this episode has went. But it's been so like feeling like it's been so good. Like I feel like we touched so many things.
Wait
that
to go back and
like,
listen to it, because I'm like, I know there's so many gems that I'm gonna need to remember. And like, you know how like we're in the moment right now talking, like sometimes you don't soak all in what was said until you hear it back. And like, yeah, that is different.
Now that's what I always say. I was just talking about this because I had my homegirl Taylor. Shout out to Taylor. I always shout Taylor out because my girl is literally letting God use her to edit my podcast until I'm able to do it for myself. And I always play back the edited clips because we never take out audio. That's one thing we don't do, is like we don't take out audio because the environment, I want you to mean what you say.
It takes away the authenticity too, because that's us walking with Christ. Like, we are not perfect, and so like us, if there's a mess up, if there's, you know, a word we said by accident or whatever,
like I know how omnipotent, I don't know all that, you cool, but I know I'm with God, you know what I'm saying?
So like cool. That shows people like
you ain't gotta quote the Bible front to back. Like you, exactly.
Oh yeah, I can't do that. I did download an app though that teaches you, like, it's like a verse flashcard kind of deal. So I do know some, but it's funny because I'm gonna tell you that. Okay, it's funny because you know how like, so I'm a reader, but sometimes I struggle with comprehension. And when I was reading my word, like I've been in the word for a minute, like I don't know it front to back. I can't tell you every single verse, every single location, or I may know the verse but not know where to find it, like off the top of my head. But I was having a conversation with the guy that you met earlier, my cousin. Okay. And it was a God moment because we were sitting there talking, and I don't know how we got to the conversation, but he was talking about like just faith and church culture and all the things. And I was talking about free will, and like we were talking about Adam and Eve in the garden and all of this stuff. And I was like, who am I that I know all this stuff? And he was like, you really know what you're talking about. I'm like, it was cool to see, like, I am actually taking something in and
applying it, right?
Because the way he moved in that conversation, I was like, you know,
it teach you more than what you thought you knew. It goes to show you, like, I might not know verse by verse, but I know enough to be used by God.
Yeah, yes. And I was like, I was crying, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Because one thing that I think is the coolest thing ever is to be used by God. And so like when I have moments like that, I'm like, oh my God. Like,
and that's why I love this like platform, because it's authenticity to let you know that God don't wait till you a certain age. He don't wait till you anointed at a certain level to use you. God will use you in the trenches. God will use you for one person, and then he'll use you for a multitude of people.
Right.
That's why those who steward well over little steward will be ruler over many. We look at it just for finances. It's not just for finances.
It's for everything. It's your health.
If you can do
It's
the
everything.
minimum when it comes to my word, when it's one person, you can handle the platform when it's a million people.
Yeah.
And so I love that this podcast is you being invited, you letting you know, like, hey, I'm cool. I can be myself. And that's why we don't edit things. And, go back to me, saying, like, shout out to Taylor, because she do her big one. And when I be listening back, I be like, dang, God, because I don't necessarily struggle when I have guests. I don't struggle when it's just me, because I know I'm teaching something that has been applied to my life. But conversation is always different when it's two people versus when it's one. And so the enemy would try to be like, girl, none of that you talking about makes sense.
But
until when I play it back, I'm like, dang, it was spot on.
Yeah.
Like, it was right. It was blah, blah. And God keeps saying, like, use your voice, because the enemy would try to plant anything to make you not. So that's why I'm so thankful that this podcast got this foundation where you ain't got to be perfect. You ain't got to be this. You ain't got to be that. Erase all the stipulations that you ever heard you feel like you needed to have, because God don't call to qualify. He qualifies to call,
And that's funny, because that's my favorite thing to stand on all the time, whether I'm going to a job interview or just like anything that, because what I also realize is I need to start going for stuff like that, like stuff that I'm not deemed qualified for, because if it's for me, God will have it for me. And it's just crazy how, like, I don't know, he really does, like, he'll prepare you and equip you for whatever.
Yeah, for sure. That's just like this podcast. Like, it's a process. I'm thankful to be able to show people what it looked like. I'm here to the point now I got guests. Before, I done did 3 seasons where it's just me. I had no visual. It's just audio. So it's just a process. And so, I'm just thankful. And I'm just thankful too, like, that people submit to the opportunity to be on this podcast. You know what I'm saying? Because it allows it, like, it helps me to do my assignment, but it also helps you to do your assignment too, because it give you a voice to let you know, like, well, dang, if I could talk to her like that, I could talk to anybody like that, because it's such a blessing for people to see you at your core, right? And never want anything from you, This ain't nothing. Like, we met up because we get to meet in person for the first time and cool, stuff like that. But at the same time, the podcast is like a blessing, like I'm like, oh shoot, I'm gonna shoot a podcast with her, like, cool, like, but at the same time, it's just I ain't want nothing in return. You could have told me no and I still was gonna come. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just thinking, like, oh, this is an asset. I'm gonna bring my podcast, because that was never my intentions when we first linked, but God would do a 2-for-1 special. And it's like, y'all linking and y'all meeting, y'all gonna be impacted by each other's life as y'all have been when y'all was living in a distance. But so use this as an opportunity for both of y'all to help one another. And so it's just been a message. This podcast episode has just been a message, and it's been a vibe, and it's been so feeling. And I always be like, bro, I'm so ready. Sometimes I'll be like, God, I can't wait to, like, drop the episode. And he'll be like, chill, bro. Like, chill.
Girl.
So I'm thankful for that. And Inez wearing my merch today.
Oh yeah,
like,
you see me, and it's funny because you know how earlier we touched on, like, we didn't even know if this meetup was gonna happen, and the whole reason we were talking about disappointment and rejection in the first place was because I was scared to open a text message from her because I thought that she wasn't gonna come. And God was like, no, I'm gonna show you, like, I'm about to put you around people who aren't gonna let you down anymore. And I was like, period.
Yeah, and it was my girl's birthday, so I had to bless my girl.
Period.
Like, you got to have a
But, like, this is the comfiest crew neck I've ever felt in my life. But also this reminder, I think that God did this on purpose, because it says more than enough. And for so long, I didn't feel like enough. And to have that as a reminder, like, I am worthy. I'm more than enough. I am more than capable. Like,
and I know it was never
That's
God,
a God
because
thing.
literally I only had 2 sizes left, and I was like, I'm gonna ask her what the size is.
that's
She was
crazy.
like, oh, I wear extra large. Like, clutch, got one. And,
That's so wild.
And I knew it was like nothing but God, so I was like, I'm gonna bring that for her. And it's just God, like, God be God, and for real, like,
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for, like, friendship and community and people saying yes to Christ, because when they say yes to Christ, somebody else gonna say yes to Christ. It's never just for you, And so we have connected, and it's just been impactful. Like, it's been a full day, you know, and I'm just excited for what's to come from our relationship and us meeting in person.
Excited.
And because, you know, it just hit different when you in person versus when you connecting via phone or whatever the case may be. But I'm excited, and I'm thankful that we recorded this episode. It has been, it's been so impactful. Like, it's just been nothing but God. And I'm thankful because God will use you when you don't even know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so
Well, and that's your reminder,
deep.
like you were saying earlier, show up because you're not showing up for you. You're showing up for her too.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true. This is like, you don't know who life gonna be impacted by your story when this podcast drop. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You don't know who deal with what you was talking about earlier. And so your yes can change the trajectory of somebody's whole life. And be like, oh, well, she said yeah, and she dealt with what I deal with, so I can say yeah and deal with the same things and still be who I know I can be. So that concludes the episode, and I appreciate you, Inez, for coming, being a guest on the podcast. It's been so dope and so real.
Be here.
So this your girl Samantha, and this is my podcast, Naturalized. Until next time, be you, Black girl.
Bye. 'Cause I had enough, Holy Spirit, fill me.